Hi, well, property women. Look, there's so much going on at the moment in this changing landscape, and I just want to let you know our community is here for you. So in some cases, I know some of you have lost jobs, some of you are struggling, just to find the finances to meet the commitments that we have to meet as women, as mothers. And then some of us are halfway through projects and there's stresses of that too, what's going to happen in the financial landscape. And this is where it's really about a test of character. And so many of you won't know that I went through something similar, but on a financial crisis with the GFC, and I call it my perfect storm. So there was 4 things that happened at that time. One was the after effects of the GFC. So little were we to know that the banks were going to totally change the landscape on us. And they actually asked for revaluation. So I got a recall for $400,000. Supposed to put my hand in my pocket and find that. At the same time, and that was because they revalued. So property values went down. They needed some funds back into their account for their security. The other thing was they changed to serviceability, like go figure. We'd never had that asked of us before as developers. So there was also on the back of that, I had a serious car accident. And at that time, it was really serious because my kids got called in and to say goodbye. And I had 13 companies at the time. So not only did they have the pressure on them about my health, but also what was going to happen with the companies. And that's where I handed my power of attorney over to a financial advisor. They made some investments for me. One of those were into Great Southern trees. Those trees never got planted. And so we ended up in a class action against the bank, who was actually doing the recall on me. Talk about complicated. And then the final straw was, I took 12 months to recover, going through rehab and, physio and all those sorts of things. And at the end of that time, when I finally took my control of my funds back, there was something like 1.8 million missing, just gone. And it had gone out in so many different ways that it was smoke and mirrors. It was really hard to find. Obviously, the financial advisor that I'd trusted got reported to ASIC, ATO, and all the rest of it. But I was in the poo and I was really struggling. So all I want to say from that is we've all had tough times, and this might be a tough time for you, but I want to encourage you. I want you to think about how we can set ourselves up to succeed, how we can set ourselves up that we can come out of this flourishing. And I think that what we need to do is we invest a lot in learning about property. I'm here to tell you my greatest lesson from all that, we need to invest in ourselves and our mindset, because this attitude that we carry through this period is going to make such a difference. Since then, I've found peace. I've found, I'm traveling well through this period, but it doesn't come without us educating ourselves and learning those skills. So today, I want to introduce you to a beautiful lady who I met in Sydney in 2012 when I'd come up from Victoria to Sydney, and she'd come down from this little place called Budrum and Sunshine Coast, who ever heard of that? And we'd meet, and we decided independently, obviously, that we were going to learn and study corporate advisory, capital raising, and we learned from some of the best in Australia, best business brains. So we were very blessed. But amongst that too, we were empowering ourselves with, personal development learning. And I could see this person was going to be instrumental in my life. Lo and behold, 6 years later, I move up to the Sunshine Coast, land in Budrum, not far from this beautiful lady. So I want to share with you someone who I call my go-to girl, who helps me get clarity, understanding, work through the maze if I get confused. And that way, the things that we're going to talk about today, hopefully will be things that can empower you too. So I'm going to introduce Rebecca Ramsay, who is a global coach, personal development and business. So she's got an amazing mind and has the ability to get through the maze, but has intuitive insight. So we'll allow her some time with us today. But what I'd like to do, ask her to spend some time with us today. And what I'd like to do down the future is do this on a regular basis so that we're building that strength. And it might take us 2 months to get through this. It might take us 6, we don't know. we want to be here for you as a community. We want you to feel encouraged. We want you to build strength. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rebecca Ramsay and just ask Rebecca to talk a little bit about herself so you have a bit of an understanding of her background. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much. It's very lovely to be here. And yeah, as Lorna said, we've known each other for a number of years, and she's also an inspiration to me. And yeah, it's a real, tit for tat with us. We keep each other in alignment and on track, which is fantastic. So it's a real pleasure to have a chat with Lorna and with all of you. And my background is in coaching for the last dozen or so years, and that's been my study and focus has been in human behaviour and how we optimize and get the most out of ourselves. And more recently, my work is very much around helping people identify the potential in themselves and work with what they've got in terms of strengths and talents and resources. Sometimes they're not aware of what they are, so I uncover those. And I primarily coach business owners and leaders in organisations. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of a framework for what I do. But I'm available today to chat about the things that are important to the ladies at Well Property Women. So hit me with the questions, Lorna.
Okay, good. And I think that you hit on the top point I would like to make is that we as women are leaders. We're being asked to step up and step out in extraordinary ways, whether it be work from home with the kids and the dog and the whatever else that needs attention, still cook, clean, isolation. It's so many things that we're being asked of, and to be stable for our kids. There's the challenges of how the kids are handling this, and when they're stuck inside or not able to be with their friends. So there's a psychology that comes into it as well. And our role as women, we are leaders, is critical to the survival of and revival of this nation. So one of the things I'd like to discuss is those that are in a position where maybe they're lost their jobs, maybe they can't go to the gym or the coffee shops and those sorts of things. They've got all this time now, not necessarily quality time, but they've got time. How can we make sure that we're investing in our time the best possible way?
Right, I love it. So yeah, as you say, there's so much incoming, there's so much required of us right now, of everybody, not just women, but how do we prioritize? How do we decide where's the best place to be investing? And given that's what you ladies are interested in, I think it's a great way to talk about it. So the first thing is that, I work a lot with, the types of people we are, understanding our sort of profiles and where we fit. And as, women, which is a generalization, we tend to be looking to see how we can serve those around us, as well as the people, as well as the activities and the tasks and the projects. And of course, we sometimes forget to serve ourselves. So it's a really important in times like this to get clear on what the priorities are and maybe have some guidelines and some rules around that. So an example with that might be, we've got elderly neighbours in our street, for example. So I could be available every day of the week to go and do shopping, or I can just let them know that I'm going on Thursday mornings. If you get a list to me by then, I'm happy to do it. And starting to, excuse the background noise, starting to actually have some rules around how we say yes, because we are yes sayers. This is what we want to do. We want to be able to contribute. We don't want to say no, especially at a time of crisis. So having some rules around how we say yes. And that might be around the timeline that we say yes. That might be around the degree to which we say yes. So having a think about that. So what are the other rules that you can put around of how to say yes? Because I often have people say to me, well, just say no, just tell them you can't help. And that's just not who I am. Like I have commitments to a range of different things that aren't all, paid work, but it's actually really important for me to be able to do that in a way that's sustainable. So in times like this, it's even more important that we find sustainable ways to do the things that are important to us and contribute in the ways that are important to us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's cool. So how about talking a little bit more about structuring priorities? What sort of tools?
Okay, so when we're structuring priorities, we need to, you may well have heard of the concept of the pebbles and the rocks. So we need to identify what are the key priorities, because if we write a list of all the things that need to be done, it's never ending, right? But being able to chunk that into larger chunks so that we can go, okay, it's family, and then within family, there's my immediate family, then there's my extended family. And, we've got lots of concerns at the moment over, the people on the outside and the outskirts of our immediate environment. So, and when we're prioritizing, we need to get our chunks, and then we need to chunk down the chunks. So what's happening, and I'm noticing this with people that I'm talking to, is that other people's priorities are taking precedent. Okay, so everyone is stressed. There is no one that's not being affected right now. If you don't have a clarity around what is your priorities, someone else's will become your priorities. Okay, so we need to get clear on that. So right now, across the board, it needs to be your health and safety, and the health and safety of those that you live with generally. And then what's beyond that? So you can think of it's like a pebble in a pond kind of concept that we need to use right now, even more than normal. So think about what are those chunks, and then if there's the financial side of things, like if it's around income or investing or what to do with our money, where to move it, where to shift it, prioritizing which bit do I need to do something about now, which bit can be put on hold, and then speaking to people that you can get advice from. Okay, so if it's around access to money, or if it's around movement of money, who do I need to talk to get that advice? How do I prioritize calling the banks? How do I prioritize calling the lenders? How do I prioritize calling the investors or the stakeholders in your realm of things? So chunks are really important, like sort of themes, and then chunking those down. But if you're not already writing that down, or however you like to use that, but I really recommend actually getting a piece of paper and just drawing some circles or buckets and identifying, we can't really manage more than 3 big chunks of information at any point in time. So right now, you need to identify what your 3 are, and everything else is going to be outside of that.
Okay, do you have tools that help with that, or is it just purely getting a piece of paper and writing it down?
So this is a bit of the way that I work. There are hundreds of templates and specific tools out there. I tend to work with the person that's in front of me, so it's going to be a little bit different for everyone. I don't usually believe unless it's a one size fits all kind of strategy. So for some people, and Lorna, you are particularly immaculate in your written work. I've seen it and how you do that. So for some, it's going to be literally a clean piece of paper, maybe some colored pens, and draw yourself 3 columns and then go what's going to be in them. For others, it's going to be using a 1-page planner online. But I actually think right now we can get caught up in the detail of all of these things. Things are changing so quickly on a daily basis. You need something flexible. So your ability to be agile right now, and your flexibility is going to determine the degree to which you are flexible, is going to determine how you come out the other side of this situation. Yeah. So that the person with the most, or the organism with the most flexibility, wins. So that's something to think about too when we're prioritizing. We've got to be careful that we don't get too set in our ways right now. And a lot of us like to have control and planning. And this is not a time to be concrete about things. This is a time to make the best decisions for today. And that's where the chunking is important, because the big chunks won't change. My health and safety is not going to change. It's always, every day that's going to be a priority, but how I get that each day might be different. Looking after my finances is going to stay a chunk, but how I do that each day might be different. Yeah, because we don't have a timeline on this. So, and the rules are changing every day. So flexibility is actually really important. And I know we all want, what's the answer? What should I do? There isn't a one-way answer right now. In other times, in other spaces, that's a way we can go. But it's really important that you have a plan and know that you've got to be flexible with it. So get your main key chunks, and then every day you review those. Okay, can I continue with how I was approaching that yesterday? Yes or no? What needs to change based on the new information? So I'm actually, leaning more towards something quite flexible, Lorna, quite interpretive, and it's going to be able to change with what's happening around us.
Cool, thanks. Well, ladies, one of the things I would focus on first is actually preserving all cash. So if you've got the opportunity to go to the bank or just call the bank and put all your loans on hold, put your credit cards on hold if you can. ATO will allow you to defer those payments. If you've got tax payments coming up in the next little while, they'll give you, I think, 6 months reprieve. So it's all about preserving cash right now because we don't know how long it's going to be. So that would, on a monetary side, be one of the priorities. On the other side, for me, it's not the end of the world. We will survive this. We will get through it. So we have to keep functioning. And if we give up and we throw our arms in the air, we're going to come out of this in such a worse place than if we proceed. So it might be something like, how can I better my skills? I'm stuck at home right now. How can I better my skills? Or it might be, how can I give quality time to my children in this blessed time that we have? Because normally you wouldn't have time to give to your children. So Becca's, what else can you add to that?
Yeah, so there is a lot of opportunity that's going to come out of this time, and creating it as an experience for the ones we have around us, especially when we've got children at home, that they're going to remember it one way or the other. So think about how we want that story to go. We get to write that story. We get to be a part of creating that with them, importantly. One of the things we must do amidst all of the other planning and organising and coping is just to be checking in on ourselves and our mindset. Lorna mentioned it a little bit earlier. So, and look, I can tell you, hand on heart, in the last 2 weeks, I've had, a particular day where I let it all go, and it just spiraled into, by the end of the day, I could not see anything good out of it. I was getting scared, and that was because I stopped feeding myself the right stuff. So right now, have some very strict rules for yourself around how much information you access, when you access it, and where you access it from. So be really mindful that, yes, you need to stay abreast of what the situation is, but you also need to make sure that you're limiting that feed. Yeah, there's really usually 2 updates a day. I choose to get mine from the ABC or the government website. And I know what, right. So yesterday, I know that's as of Monday, no one's going to be at school, more or less. So what's the key information? I don't need to go drilling down onto all the details about that, because it's not something I can control. It's not something that's going to affect me. I just need to keep what I need. It's a kind of create my own need to know basis. So that's one thing, getting that information. But also knowing that I've got to balance that. And this might sound crazy, but I am searching out the comedy. There's some very clever people doing some very funny things right now, just to break that space a little bit. And that's okay. It's actually really important. So, for anything in life, if we can see the funny side of it, or, a perspective, it doesn't mean we're not taking it seriously, but it means that we're just filling ourselves with something other than the seriousness and the concern around it. So so be careful where you're getting the updates and information, and when and how. Make sure that you're, bringing humour, that's important to me, but also just a few moments by yourself. So the other thing I've done in the last couple of weeks is, about 10 days ago now, I just searched up on Spotify a 21-day, I just looked for a course. So it's a 21-day meditation program. So 15 minutes every morning, I dedicate to that. And then I just know that I've fed myself. Yeah, because we've all got, multiple versions of ourselves happening. And the one we need right now is the one that can stay calm and collected. And we need to feed that person within ourselves, so that that's the one that comes to the fore.
Terrific. So I agree with that totally. One of the things I do every morning, and I make sure I'm up early enough to do it, is to either have a beach walk and have gratitude going through my head as I'm doing beach walk, or it might be just sitting in bed and reading something that's going to feed my soul and nourish it as well. And I think that's really important to start the day like that. I know those with children may find it hard, but you've got to start the day. And so that might mean getting up that little bit earlier, or waking up, getting yourself a cup of tea, going out on a balcony, whatever it is. Nurture yourself at the start of the day, set your attitude for that day, and you'll be surprised at what you can manifest. There's still miracles going on. There's still amazing stories. And, one of the you're talking about humor and kindness and those sorts of things. This is where the people, humanity can really step up, and they are. And I've read so many beautiful things on the kindness pandemic example. You know, it's touching my heart, and they're the sort of ones, like you say, we need to tap into and tune into, and then just find out what's going on out there once or twice a day, but tap into the stuff that's wholesome. Make sure you surround yourself with the right people as well. It's really important to not take on someone else's energy, I guess, if it's a really negative energy, you know, because some people feed on that, they love that, and they will surround themselves with that. So from my perspective, I've got some wonderful people around me. Becca's is one of those people, and it's making sure you stay in communication with everyone. And my daughters, obviously last night I had a wonderful time on Zoom with them for my birthday, but it was a fun, they're all over the world. So, you know, it's connecting to those things that are priceless for you, that are going to feed your soul and nourish you. So Becca's, let's set them some tasks, because we want to come back probably, you know, in the next week and say, okay, where are you at now? Let's give them something to do so that we can have an accountability with this as well.
Awesome. I'm a big fan of accountability, as you know. So, so the task for this week, here's what I would suggest. Get those chunks in order. So there needs to be a chunk around self, a chunk around others, and then a chunk around your environment, whether that's your financial environment or your physical environment, what you're doing around that. So take each of those and then identify, so for self, what am I doing for myself? Every day there has to be something, whether it's that 15 minutes, you know, whether you're going to get up a bit earlier so that you get that cup of tea on the deck. You need to find that for yourself right now. I don't know, you know, whether you're introverted, extroverted or otherwise, just some moments that are about you. Okay, so prioritizing yourself, work out what that is for you. Secondly, around others. Yep. So what are your priorities around others, whether that's your children, if you have children, or family, or the neighbors, or, you know, what are the priorities? And, you know, it's going to get quite clear if we're making, you know, that reasonable and doable. And then thirdly, environment. Yeah. So this is something that will change a little bit too. So in environment, think about your physical environment, but also your financial environment, anything that you can actually have an influence over. And that's really important, that we're focusing on the things we can actually influence, because if we are focused on the things we can't, that's, you know, that's a very quick way to become unsettled. So take those three areas, identify what the priorities are for you in those and how you're going to implement that. And then what I'm suggesting is that each morning, yeah, you've got a quick, you know, 30-second check-in while you're brushing your teeth of going, okay, self, is that still relevant? Has anything changed? What do I need to shift around that or not today? Others, likewise, and environment. And so make sure that you've got just a couple of tasks that you're ticking off. So I'm a really big fan of not overcommitting, and this is through my own learned experience through clients, but also myself. If I can have 3 things I can tick off today, that is a much healthier day than 30 things I don't finish and feel like I've, you know, not made it. So at least make sure that it's doable. So in each of those areas, just give yourself one thing that it means it's a success. And check in with that each day and what needs to shift and change. That's this week's task.
Awesome. That is valuable. It's real gold there. So let's leave it there. And remember, ladies, we're here to support and encourage you, uplift you, give you some practical ways to go about it. And next week when we return, we'll have the next series of exercises and encouragement for you. Meanwhile, take care of yourselves. First priority, and of course your family next priority. And we hope to see you next week on the other side of another changing landscape, I'm sure, but we'll cope. We'll be okay. All right, so from Becca's and myself, we wish you well and see you next week.